I was always terrified that if the American industry started to fill their casks twice, we would have a huge problem getting bourbon casks for Glen Grant.
The Fred Minnick Show is brought to you by 291 Colorado Whiskey, by Michter's American Whiskies, and by Heaven Hill Brands.
Nestled in the garden-rich Speyside region of Scotland, with winds carrying the aromas of the River Spey, Glen Grant Distillery is one of the world's oldest operating whiskey distilleries. Their workhorse, wash, and spirit stills churn out some of the most affordable and accessible single malt scotches that are simply known as Glen Grant. For around $40, you can find a fruity and honey-forward 12-year Glen Grant that embodies value in a category known for attracting billionaires with rare expressions. But Glen Grant is jumping into that private jet with something so rare and crazy that they may start rethinking their strategy of value whiskey. Today on the Fred Minnick Show, we explore 60-year-old Glen Grant with an SRP of $30,000. While it's already sold for twice that at auction, the whiskey is a celebration of master distiller Dennis Malcom's career. Born at the Glen Grant Distillery in 1946, few in the worldwide spirits industry share the whiskey history of Dennis Malcom. Following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather before him, he got his start at 15 as an apprentice cooper and later as a manager supervising the growing company's 9 distilleries. In his current role as master distiller, Dennis has maintained the distillery's distinctive history while leaving his own mark with the likes of Arborellus and core expressions 10, 12, 15, and 18 years old. Reflecting on his diamond anniversary, Malcom said, "It's never been a job for me. It's been a way of life. I don't like my actual birthday. That makes me feel older, but I like my milestones with Glen Grant because it's a year longer than I'm here. I can keep doing what I was destined to do." Thus, the exclusive limited edition 60-year-old single malt is a celebration of Dennis's 6 decades of toil. It's bottled from a single ex Oloroso sherry cask that was filled on October 24th, 1960, the oldest to date the distillery has bottled in its 181-year anniversary. Just 360 decanters of this is available worldwide, and I got a little tipple of it. Bottled at 52.8% ABV, Glen Grant 60-year-old is non-chill filtered. And on this episode of the newly formatted podcast, Master Distiller Dennis Malcom takes me on a tasting journey. And while it happened virtually, to sip with an icon is always an honor. Enjoy the interview. And joining the Fred Minnick Show is Dennis Malcom, Master Distiller Glen Grant. How you doing, sir? You doing all right?
I'm doing fine tonight. It's a cold night in Scotland, but I'm doing fine.
How has 2021 been for you? Because we're coming up on the end of the year. Glen Grant's had a lot of success in the past year. Just want to see how things been for you.
Yeah, it's been very remotely. I've missed the meeting of people. The people is the most important thing, and as you know, it's people that drink our product. So I very much miss them. I jokingly say to people, this last year's been like a year of Sundays. Sunday's a lazy day where you have lunch with the family and lounge about. So it's been a funny year. But I've been doing presentations and things like that over the Zoom and Teams.
So you haven't been able to come to the States?
No, I haven't been to the States for a few years, actually. I was over there, 8 years ago, maybe doing a Meet the Masters with some of the other masters, like Robbie Cox and Mike Miyamoto and such likes. So we toured a few of the cities that time, It's a big country compared to us.
Sure, yeah. And you've got you've got enormous demand on Glen Grant right now. I mean, I gotta imagine though, you're having some internal pride seeing the success that you all are having here lately.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, and this has all happened after Campari took over, bought the company in 2006. They heavily invested in the business, and they wanted to make Glen Grant shine, which I've always wanted to do. So in that last sort of 15, 16 years, I've had a free hand, and we've created a lot of new expressions to showcase Glen Grant much more, just let people see the range that we've got, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I've always known Glen Grant to be like, kind of a value Scotch, like something you would go in, get a nice single malt, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. And to see the range that you all are bringing, it's kind of like it's exciting, but it's also like, whoa, where did this come from? To a lot of the average consumers.
Well, it's been there before, you know, when prior to 1979, when Chivas Pernod took over the company, they needed Glen Grant for for the Chivas Regal. You know, they laid down vast amounts of Glen Grant for the Chivas Regal, and they didn't promote Glen Grant as a single malt like the way the previous owner, Douglas McKessick, did. So I can just see us doing exactly what we did pre 1979. You know, showcasing the range.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at, you're kind of, it's almost like a rebirth in some ways.
It is actually, and we've done it. We've done it quite slowly. We haven't sort of, the world was our oyster, you know, when you get released from a big company like that. But Campari did it like like they say, building a cathedral. They did it very slowly and steadily. You know, a good firm foundation, which is
Yeah.
good.
And the majority of my followers and listeners are American whiskey fans, and of course Campari owns Wild Turkey, and
Sure.
I was curious, could we maybe see a Wild Turkey collaboration in the near future with Glen Grant?
Well, when Campari bought Wild Turkey, that must have been about some 8 years ago or thereabouts. I was over with Franco Peroni and to have a look at it before we bought it, and you know I had a smile twice the size of my face because I was always terrified that if the American industry started to fill their casks twice, we'd have a huge problem getting bourbon casks for Glen Grant. But when we bought Campari, I thought, hey, we've got our own bourbon distillery. It's lovely.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
I love that. I love that story. Have you had much time with Jimmy Russell or any?
Yeah. I've met Jimmy. I did all the cities with Jimmy a few years ago as well. You know, and he's an experienced guy. He's much older than me. He's been much longer in the industry than me. And boy, he's got loads of stories, and he's a great believer in consistent quality. And that's where I feel I lie as well. You know.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look a little bit at Glen Grant, the brand. Let's kind of kind of deconstruct it a little bit in terms of how it's made. Let's kind of go at the very basics. Where are you getting your barley from? Talk us through, your malting process and all the little things that, a lot of people may not know about Glen Grant.
Okay, the reason Glen Grant's situated in Rothes is because the two founders, John and James, saw it was an ideal situation because it had its own little valley where the distillery was built in 1840, own water supply, and it was just at the edge of the Lake of Moray, which is a fertile plain where it was very prolific barley growing area. And 16 miles north of us was, at that time, a deep-sea port in Lossiemouth. So ships came in there with barrels from Portugal and Spain, and they brought up coal for the fires, for the stills, and we put our whisky back out again as well via boats. And it was made easier by the founder because James Grant founded the railways, the first railways up in this area. In 1852, he brought the railway from Lossiemouth Harbour to Elgin City, which is 8 miles away, and then up to Glen Grant in 1858. So he had his own supply chain train, really, which was great. So our barley is all processed and sourced locally. We used to make quite a lot of our own malted barley on site with drum maltings and floor maltings, very traditionally. But in 1972, I knocked the maltings down, and we decided to buy it in from suppliers, big maltsters, and that was to expand the distillery and double the size of the distillery in 1972. So we stopped our own malting and bought it in from commercial suppliers.
Probably freed up a little space for you and some employees to do a few extra things around the distillery.
It did indeed, and it allowed us well, we're pretty hemmed in the little valley we're in, so by knocking the maltings down and creating a new mash house and still house, we still had the old one running while we were doing that. So it was quite a challenge, and it was an enjoyable challenge, doubling up and keeping the old one running. So it was the right way to go because Glen Grant was growing very quickly.
Well, and you take us through the fermentation techniques that you're using at Glen Grant. In American style whiskeys, my listeners are used to hearing about mashes versus worts and about everything kind of coming together. And let's go through like the very basic process of fermenting malted barley and some of the uniqueness of that.
Yeah, certainly will. Well, we mash 12.28 tons of malted barley every 6 hours, and we drain off the sugary water from the mash into wooden fermenters. Glen Grant is two words, tradition and innovation, really. So we're still very traditional. We use wooden fermenters, and a lot of our competitors are not doing that now. They're using stainless steel because you can sanitize stainless steel or glass-lined vessels 100%. But you can't do that with wood. So all these cracks and crevices where some bacteria might lay and stay there, I feel that percentage that's left adds to the character of the product. And we ferment for 48 hours completely. That's our finished program of fermenting. Mm-hmm. And then we pump it to our stills where we have 4 pairs of stills. We break it into 4 pairs, 4 wash stills, 4 spirit stills. So we collect 60,000 litres of wort from every mash, and then we split that 60,000 into the 4 wash stills and boil off the low wines, boil off the alcohol from the low wines every 6 hours. Now, the low wines that we collect from that wash still and the heads and the tails from the spirit still of that pair is the exact balanced charge for the next spirit still, and then we pump over another fermented wash still. So it's a balanced batch system all the way through, and it leads to very good quality control because you can check every quarter of your production to see that there's no differences between the pairs of stills.
Now, in fermentation, do you use any enzymes or anything like that to kind of help with fermentation?
No, we do not. We just use brewer's yeast and allow it to ferment for 48 hours. We keep them clean so that we're not having too much bacteria there because we don't want the bacteria to gobble up the sugars. We want the yeast to convert that into alcohol for us.
Enzymes are being used a lot right now in America. Is that showing up in Scotland at all? Are enzymes a thing in fermentation there?
No, it's not a done thing in Scotland, and the definition of single malt Scotch whisky is barley, yeast, and water, and no additives. So
an enzyme would be considered an additive, like they couldn't even add that into the fermentation. Okay,
that's correct. It's described as an additive and not allowed. So,
but then you add coloring, and so then it kind of like you add.
Well, there's only one or two colouring liquids that's used, but I mean, we at Glen Grant use it very, very sparingly because it's only to colour correct. Because the 12 and the 10 we have colour correction on it because we've got sherry and bourbon casks for the recipe, for the profile for it. But the 15-year-old is single first fill bourbon casks only. And the 18-year-old is natural colour from American wood, remade hogsheads and bourbon barrels. So every time you see a bottle of 18-year-old on the shelf, it might be slightly different in colour, but it's supposed to be because we just give it the natural colour that it comes out of the cask.
Okay. Now, you still, what are your proof points on your still? Are they 160 around there?
Well, we're collecting about 73% by volume, down to about 63%, and the average strength before we fill is around about 68, 69% by volume.
Okay.
And then we further reduce that to a filling strength of 63.5%, or it's 111 proof Sykes, the old way.
Mm-hmm. And then you all put in the barrel and you age it in a warehouse and just let it sit. Do you all rotate barrels or anything that while they're in the warehouse?
No, we're very traditional that way, and the majority of our warehouses are dunnage warehouses, not racked or palletized. We have got a couple of racked ones, but they're just recently acquired. 95% of our products kept in dunnage warehouses, very traditional, and we do not re-rack them or anything like that. They're in there, they stay there for the rest of their life until such times as we decide to take them out for bottling.
Okay. And then, of course, we've got a little something here that was bottled, and it was put in the warehouse more than 60 years ago. So, tell us as I open this contraption. First of all, the press sample that you all sent is like, you all could really put this in one of those like what's inside here, and no one could open it. It takes you a minute. It's like a Rubik's cube.
Yeah. It's a little bit sort of being protective of it, really.
Yeah, listen, it's more than childproof. It's whiskey writer proof. It took me a little time here to figure it out. So
yeah, but it took 60 years, Fred, to get to that quality. So a little bit of time's not a bad thing to waste till you get into it. I'll show you when you think that is difficult. This is a packaging for the bottle. It's in a sustainable walnut. Wow. And the decanter sits in there and closes off on my fingers as well, I think.
And what is this? What does this cost at retail?
Pardon?
What does this cost at retail?
It's selling at 25,000 euros.
25,000 euros. I think that's around 30,000 US.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So tell us about the 60-year-old. Why is this one so? Why is this one so special? Other than being 60 years.
It's special. It's special for me because the company decided to bottle it to mark my 60 years in the industry. I was 60 years in the industry on the 3rd of April this year. So we decided to lay down and bottle it off, and we bottled 360 bottles. It's you can see by the colour, it's a very dark, I call it a chestnut colour.
Yeah.
And it was filled into an Oloroso sherry butt, first full Oloroso sherry butt, hence the very beautiful dark chestnut colour you've got there. It was bottled at cask strength, which is 52.8% by volume. Now the aroma for me is first you get vibrant ripe Seville oranges, and they give way to sort of rich fruits and nuts. And when I say rich fruits, I mean apricots and peaches, and the nuts are pecan nuts. And I say that because I love that pecan cookies, with the pastry and the honey and the pecan nuts, and that's what it reminded me of. And there is a little hint of smoke there, cigar smoke, I would say, yeah. Delicate smoke. And there's a reason for that as well, because it was filled and produced in 1960. And remember, I knocked down the maltings in 1972 to double the distillery. So we were maybe having about 8-9 parts per million of phenols in our malt because we peated it slightly ourselves. Now, the taste to me is, it's rich, fruity cake to me, In Scotland, we have got this Christmas cake. I don't know if you've got that in America or not, fruit cake, yeah, where you've got raisins, sultanas, orange peel, and then marzipan on the top, and then some icing over that. So that's that almondy, nutty note that you get from the marzipan. And also, after the fruitiness, there's some dark chocolate and treacle toffee notes there. That's just my interpretation of it.
Wow.
It's good, eh? And that's without water. I don't recommend you put water in this one. This was made to.
Yeah, I agree. This definitely, you do not want to add water, and I've tasted some of the rarest whiskeys ever made.
Yeah.
I've tasted prior to Prohibition. This is one of the top whiskeys I've ever tasted in my life.
Thank you. The finish to me is it's very long and lingering, and because it's that dark fruit toffee treacle notes, I think it's more figs, dates, with a delicate hint of smoke on the finish.
Wow, this is beautiful.
And it's just basically, it's telling me a lot of things. You said it earlier on, Glen Grant was more a sort of go-to malt for easy accessible and quite inexpensive to get. But this is just proving to the world that Glen Grant is not a young, good malt. It can keep on appreciating till it's 60 years of age.
On the nose, there is this. It has a bit of like this, like dried wood, like a room filled of emptied barrels.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's one of the most beautiful smells in whiskey. It's kind of like walking into a rick house or a warehouse, but instead of like smelling the alcohol in the air, you smell like the work of the barrel. And oak can be a very pungent, very off-putting note, but when it's perfect, it's the most beautiful thing in the world to smell. And I get that on the nose, and then when I put it on my palate, it just explodes. It just absolutely explodes on here. Like I am like, I mean, it's one of those, Dennis, where I don't want to talk. I just kind of want to be in a room by myself, like reading a book and just thinking alone with my thoughts. And this is beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And when I present it to other people, I usually say, I've given you a short journey on colour, aroma, taste, and finish, but it doesn't finish there. You can start that journey again by taking one more sip of it, and that's exactly what you can do.
And the great things about great whiskeys is you can close your eyes and think about them later. The greatest things I have ever tasted, I can picture myself exactly in the moment when I tasted them. And I tell you what, I would much rather this be in person than on Zoom. But this is it's still great.
Yeah. Well, I'd have loved you to be at Glen Grant as well, because we could have walked into the dunnage warehouse where the cask was lying there, and before we filled it, and you could have had a sample out of it, But this is as good as it gets, This is straight from the cask.
Yeah. This is amazing. And you said there were 326 bottles?
360 bottles. 360 decanters, bottles, actually. It was made into a special decanter, shaped decanter. Maybe you don't see it there in that tiny little sample, but it's
in
the shape of our wash still. We made this into the exact shape, and it's a Scottish crystal decanter, and it's nice to have something that when people pick it up, they recognize the distillery without even reading it,
Right. Do you know if this is still available, or did it sell out like immediately? Is there anything out there in the world where you can buy it?
Wow, I heard a wee while ago that the orders were all in already, so maybe some of the countries might have one. I'm not sure, I'm not sure if they have or not.
I know it's people listening to this, watching this. They're just going to be mad because they can't have any. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
they're just going to be mad at me for doing this. But I will tell you that if I had 25,000, 30,000, I mean, I'd go as far as $40,000, and that was not a lot of money to me. I would buy this bottle. I would buy this
yeah,
bottle without hesitation.
yeah.
But
There was one. They put one over and auctioned it over in China.
mhm.
A month ago, and I think it somebody bought it for $59,000.
Okay.
So that's what
So
they
now,
paid
so
for
I just said 40,000. Now I'm getting tested. Like, do I want to drop 60,000 on it now?
it. Go and see my American colleagues over there who will be importing it and see what they say.
We'll see. I can savor what I have here in my sample for. I can milk that for a good year or two, unless
Yeah,
unless some of my cigar buddies come over to my office, and then I'm toast. They'll take it right off the rack and sip it with a cigar. But this is
yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Um, what else? Do you have any other big releases like this coming up?
Well, I did say when Campari took over, they wanted to put Glen Grant back on the world stage, which they have done so far.
Hmm.
And this one is just to mark my 60 years, but there is plans afoot to launch in the coming years something slightly older, slightly different. And we're also going to be extending the range because the range just now is 5 for Italy right through sort of Arbораlis, which is
Hmm.
non-aged, 10, 12, 15, 18. So the top of the range just now is 18, the normal range for everyone. So we're going to be releasing next year and the following year, just extend the range a little bit more.
Okay. So you'll have 65, 70.
Well, we're hoping to. We're hoping to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I'm hoping I'm still going to be around then as well.
Oh, come on now. You'll be here for another 60 years. Don't even give me that business. You're gonna be here for a while. Don't even
Well,
start there.
I hope so. I hope so.
So
Because
it is the holiday season, and this is a show that gets downloaded in more than 100 countries, and majority of those countries celebrate Christmas, and Christmas music is going on everywhere. And this time, during this season, I like to ask people about their favorite Christmas songs or holiday music. So I'll throw it at you, Dennis. What are some of your favorite Christmas songs?
oh well, because I'm up in Scotland here, I always say I like to dream a bit, to dream of a white Christmas. So
Dream
Bing
of a
Crosby,
white, yeah, White Christmas, yeah.
yeah, because with climate change, this last few years, that's not always been true up in Scotland, even though we do get a lot of snow, but we've had it already. So I like the snow falling, and you can be inside with a lovely warm fire going, pour yourself a dram, and relax and keep warm.
Do you listen to Bing Crosby's White Christmas while you're kicking back?
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's played every year. Every year, I think it's one of the best ones.
And what's the best gift that you ever got?
The best gift. Oh wow. Maybe I wouldn't. I'm not going to say it's a whiskey because the best gift I ever got was my daughter when she was born. She was.
Oh,
She's kept me occupied and kept me busy all my life. But I think I think that I haven't got. I've had a few drams of this one, so I think maybe to date I tend to agree with you. This one is the best one I've had so far.
awesome. So this is your gift. This is your best gift. Oh,
Yeah, that's the best one just now. Yeah, I can tell you. It's a,
oh.
it surpasses a lot of them. And if I had to go back to the if I had to go back to our range, Glen Grant uses a lot of bourbon casks for its 5-year-old for Italy and its Arbораlis and the 10-12. But the 18-year-old is completely American wood, remade hogsheads and bourbon, and it's so floral, delicate, rich, and I think it's absolutely lovely.
Wow. Well, Dennis, I just got to say it's a real pleasure talking to you, hanging out with you, and this whiskey is like. I mean, I have other interviews during the day, and I want
Yeah,
to cancel them all and spend
yeah.
time with this whiskey. It's not fair to everybody else.
Well, maybe I could squirrel away a little of it and keep it for you when you do come to Scotland, if you ever get to Scotland the next year or so.
Yeah, well, let's hope. I don't even know where we are with travel
No, no.
overseas, but I'm definitely down. I'm due for a trip to Scotland, so I'd love to come. Sip this with you in person. You know,
You'd be, you'd be
next
very
to a
welcome.
fire.
Yeah, you'd be very welcome. And behind the distillery, I should have said to you, we have a 27-acre Victorian garden with waterfalls and a rocky gorge there, with a safe built into the rocks, which keeps the bottles of whiskey nice and cool. So that would be the place to enjoy it, out in the open air in the garden, with some water from the stream, which we make our whiskey with.
Well, cheers, man. I look forward to sipping with you in person
Cheers.
when that time comes. And thank you again for taking the time to sip with me. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever holiday you always celebrate. May it be with your daughter and all your friends. Cheers.
Cheers, Fred. All the best to you, and a nice Christmas to you and your family.